Hey everyone, in this video we're gonna talk a very important subject, which is JSON. If you work with web design and web development, even if you're just starting out, I'm sure you already heard about JSON. JSON is a lightweight format for storing and transporting data between applications. And the great thing about JSON is that all the most popular programming languages offer support for reading and writing data in JSON. So most of the times that you work with external sources of data, so let's say you get data from an external API, most likely that data is going to come to you as JSON. And no matter which programming language you're working with, maybe you're working with C# or PHP or JavaScript, all of them, they have support for JSON, so you will be able to work with that data. For JavaScript programmers, JSON couldn't be more convenient because it consists basically of JavaScript objects. In fact, JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. So down here, I have an example of a JavaScript object, which, as we know, is just a set of key value pairs. So what JSON is a string representation of an object. So if I had this as JSON, I would have a string that would just represent this object. But the problem about strings is that we already know that if we store something like this as a string, then it's going to be very hard to work with the data. Like when we want to get the name of the employee or the birth date, it's going to be pretty much impossible if this is stored as string. But we shouldn't worry about this because every programming language will have methods for importing and exporting data in JSON. So if we receive this thing as a string, we are going to convert it back into a JavaScript object so we can work with it. And this is what we're going to learn how to do right now. So let me just copy this variable. Let's take it to Visual Studio Code. All right, so now we just created our object. Now let's say we want to convert this to JSON so we can send to an external application. So I'm just going to create another variable called employee JSON just so we can see it better in the console. And right here, I'm going to use a method that comes with JavaScript. So you call the JSON library, and then we can use the stringify method to convert this object into JSON. So the way we use it is like this. We call the method and we just pass the object that we want to convert. In this case, we just want to convert this object. Right, so this is going to transform this object into JSON. And now that we have this, let's send it to the console and let's see what is going to be printed in the console. I'm just going to save this and going back to the page. Now, as you can see, it seems that we still have that same object. But now if we do a type of and try to get the type of that variable, as you can see, this data is now stored as a string. So I can't do like employee JSON and try to get the name. If I do this, so employee JSON.name, as you can see, this is returning undefined because this is not an object anymore. Now this is a string. So this is what JSON is. It's just a string representation of an object. So what exactly is the advantage of doing this? This is because every programming language that we know, they have a data type called string. So by storing data in a string, then this is a very lightweight format and very easy to send to different applications that use different programming languages. If we send this to an application that's using PHP, it's no problem. We just need to use a PHP method that is going to convert a string, which in this case is a JSON, into a PHP object. And the same thing for any other programming language. So this is why JSON is so powerful. Now let's see how we can do the opposite. So let's say we just received this JSON from an external source, and now we need to convert it back to an object in order to work with it. So going to Visual Studio Code, we know that we have a JSON, which is basically a string representation of an object. And this is stored inside this variable. So let's say we just got it from an external source. So now how do we convert it back into a JavaScript object? For this, I'm going to create another one, again, just to make things easier when we check this variable from the console. So I'm just going to create another one called employee obj, which I'm going to use to convert this string back into an object. So we are going to use the JSON library again, and now the name of the method is parse. So by using the parse, JavaScript is going to convert this string into an object. So inside here, I'm just going to pass the JSON that I want to convert. Now let's do console.log for this variable. So as you can see, now we have this converted back into an object. If we do type of, now we can see that it's not a string anymore. Now it's an object. And since this is an object, we can get its properties. So we could just do like employee obj.name, and we can easily work with this object's properties. Please note that not only objects can be converted into JSON, but we can do the same thing with arrays. So down here, I've just included an example, which is just an array, which is a list of values. Here we don't have key value pairs, we just have an array. And the same way, we can use the stringify to convert it into a JSON. So let's do it quickly in the console just so we can see. So now we just have an array. And if I do this, so I'm going to stringify this array or convert it into JSON. So if I do this, as you can see, it's just converted into a string. So it works the same way as an object. Actually, let's remember that if we do type of group A, let's remember that JavaScript treats arrays as objects. So maybe when you receive data from an external source, maybe it's going to be an array or an object, or maybe it's just going to be multi-dimensional arrays mixed with objects, which is what is most common out there. So this is really, really cool because now we can start sending requests to APIs and start working with external data. This is what we are going to do in the next section when we learn how to work with AJAX. I'm just going to show you a very quick example here of what we are going to work with. So I'm going to visit a website, which is the Trivia API. Here it is. Open Trivia DB. And what this is just a database of trivia questions and answers. So let's just get a quick example here. Let's get one question, and then you have multiple categories like entertainment, science, sports. Let's select history, and let's just leave all the rest as default. And let's generate an API URL. So as you can see, this is the URL to call this API. And what happens is if we use this with JavaScript and AJAX, this is what we're going to have in return. So I'm just going to call it now. And as you can see, what this is going to return to us is a JSON. So this is a trivia question with the answers. So we can create a very cool game using JavaScript. And this is what we're going to do in the next section. When we have this, we just need to convert it into an object, and then we can work with all the properties. We have the category, type, difficulty, we have the actual question, and every time we call this URL, we are going to have a different question. So I'm going to load it again. So now, as you can see, we have a different question. So we can create a very cool game that's going to get random questions from this database. So this is what we're going to do in the next section. So that was all I wanted to talk about JSON for the moment. I'll see you in the next video.